Hey there, everybody. It's Mike Yao with Savage Kingdoms role-playing game and FireNet Productions. The usual introduction. Today is an exciting video because it is we're going to do a flip through of the Savage East. I finally have my proof copy after 4 weeks with all the shipping delays here in the United States and work shortages and all that crazy stuff going on. It took like a month to get the proof copy. Usually it only takes about 2 or 3 weeks, and former publications and projects and that sort of thing. But anyway, without further ado, let's do a quick flip through. So this will just be a pretty brief video, probably I don't know, we'll see, 30 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever it takes. But yes, without further ado, here it is, the Savage East. Right there, holding into my little hands right there, as you can see, the hardcover. So, this is it. All right, that's it. That's the end of the video. Now, so we'll start with the cover right here. So again, my graphic designer was Michael Scott Phillips, who I've used before. He's a friend of mine and does great work, as you can see. Here's the spine. We'll just go through. You can see it's glossy. So we've got the Savage Kingdom's silhouette of the logo right there. Savage Kingdom's name of that. There's the three with the dragon, so that means 3rd edition, although technically it's 2nd, but we're calling it 3rd because the Reforged edition. This is my imprint here, Fire in the Head Productions. Little tiny indie publishing thing. I might use it also to produce theater and stuff. I might just use the same company, but say right there. Byline, there's our iconic, so this is the front cover, obviously. This is our iconic character for the Savage East, kind of thematically. He runs the book, or she, but I don't know, it probably is a he, but whatever. It's a samurai, in any case, a samurai-type warrior, as you can see. And this is the font that Michael Scott kind of chose that I really kind of liked. It has that kind of Eastern sort of calligraphic feel to the font. I'm not even sure what the name of the font is, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. That's the point of this. That's what it's supposed to do. And underneath it says a supplemental source book for the Savage Kingdoms 3, the role-playing game. So, and then we have our little immersive role-playing and a gritty world of Dark Ages fantasy at the bottom, which matches the core rule book. And this is the back right here. Very glossy. This is our iconic samurai visage, shall we say. Imprint, barcode, Savage Kingdoms logo, blah, blah, copyright stuff. This is our blurb at the end, on the end. Nothing super fancy, but it's okay. The only tiny flaw here, and it's really minor, is this right here, this blurb at the top, which is kind of the typical thing that we've been using at the dawn of the age of Gorgon, so as an age undreamed of. No, that's Conan. Continent was torn asunder and in place of it, which is what I was going for with that whole when the Oceus drank Atlantis and the rise of the sons of Arias and that sort of thing. So as you can see, it's a little faint there, but it's not. It's very, very minor. It's not that big a deal. And front cover, back covers are very secondary, if not tertiary, to the front cover and even the spine. So I would say front cover is primary, spine is tertiary, and secondary, and this is sort of tertiary. But you know, still, you want it to look cool, and it looks fine. So, but maybe we'll embolden that at the top a little bit. So let me give you some comparison to the core rulebook, Savage Kingdoms 3 core rulebook. So here we go. Here's its spine, its cover, and I'm sure most of you guys have seen it or perhaps even own it, which is even better. That sort of thing. So let's hold them up in comparison. You'll see the thickness. Here we go, right here. So core rulebook. So you can see it's Savage East is pretty thick, but not nearly as thick as the core rulebook. That was all by design. So the core rulebook that's on the bottom there is 400 pages or 401 or whatever it is. I think it's right. I think it's exactly 400 actually. And then the book on the top, the new book, the Savage East, is 252 pages, and that's very spot on because I actually wanted it to be 250 to 260, and we got right in that narrow window with 252. I think the digital file will be pretty much the same. Maybe one or two pages off. So there you go. So comparatively speaking, this to me personally is like the perfect size book. The core rule book is a good size for me too, but that's like the maximum of my favorite size of tomes, being big enough to have contain a lot of information, and not skimping, but also not like super ridiculously overwhelmingly thick to where the perfect binding is stressed and that sort of thing. All right, so let's go to the interior, shall we? Well, by the way, the color scheme really quick. So the color scheme again by choice. I wanted some reds and browns and golds because in the core rule book, which you just saw, was mostly blues and whites and kind of grays, to represent kind of like more of a northern kind of a frosty sort of theme. Whereas Savage East, I wanted to be a little warmer slash hotter and to kind of represent deserts and to kind of contrast the core rule book as well. Anyway, to represent deserts and so this book covers the continents of Hassan, Amanju, and the Isle continents of Ragnagard and Mezca. So what you get with Hassan and Amanju are kind of an Asiatic and a African-esque sort of continent, and so that's kind of the east of the world. And Ragnagard is a polar continent. It's not necessarily east, but this covers the continents and the cultures that were not in the core rule book. So the core rule book, hence why it's called a core rule book, contains the core rule system, but also the continent of Astagonia, which is the kind of European-esque sort of Western continent. So just explain all that really quick. All right, so you probably know that stuff, but anyway, there it is. So we're going into the interior here. So I'll just do a fairly quick flip through, not super quick. I want you guys to at least see some of it, but not super long either. So here's our table of contents. This is our first chapter break page, or splash page as it is sometimes called. And you can see there's the continent right there. That is actually Hassan, I believe, which is my sort of Arabesque continent. Oh, wait. And there's which is the African type continent. There is the visage of the samurai, his sort of mask character creation. It says at the top, cool font, and table of contents. So, flipping the page, we go into section 1. This is character creation. So the book has several sections, and then each section is broken down into sort of chapters. So this is chapter 1 of the first section. This is character creation. That you can see a little bit of artwork there. Here, I'll show you guys a couple more pieces of art as well. That's kind of cool. Let's see. All right, here's our Shamali woman. Represents the Shamali race, the people of Shamal. Very cool. Let's see. Let's do another one. Here's our Taikanaran woman right there. So very cool from the kingdom of Taikanara. There's some more artwork of our Tarnian representing the people of Tarnia, right there with his cool plate and chain armor. Actually, that's full plate, which technically doesn't quite really exist in the setting yet, although the Duergar kind of know how to make it, and the Tarnians are kind of getting close to it. It's just not that practical, and it uses a lot of steel. And there's a whole reason. Remember, this is more of a Dark Ages, early Middle Ages setting, and not so much what you see with the typical High Middle Ages or even Renaissance-y type stuff that to me gets way overdone. And this is our Korite, or Urish. No, she's from Erland. And you can see the little blurbs on the side. We have these in the core rule book, of course. So this is all thematically similar. This is our it says races and the blood spotch there, the blood tab as I like to call it. And at the top of the page, you can see where it says the Savage East with the two katana type weapons, or actually they're probably technically ninja toe or wakizashi. Actually, probably ninja toes. Or kind of Eastern type blades. So in the Savage Kingdom's core rulebook, we used more Western type swords, like double-edged, heavier kind of broadswords that you see more like in the Viking cultures or Norman cultures, that sort of thing. All right, so skipping through a bit more, a few more pieces of art, and hopefully you guys can see the general layout. The general layout, of course, is very similar to the core rulebook, and that's exactly by design. That's because it is a game line, so you want to tie the two together. You want to have enough contrast, I think, to kind of make it different, like with the colors. But the general layout should be the same because remember, these are reference manuals. They are not necessarily pieces of art. So they should be, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, game designers, that first and foremost is layout and ease of finding information. Secondarily is the artistic, the aesthetics. Also important, but to me, it really, when it comes down to it, it is a reference manual. This is our Yanakanese gentleman right there. Very cool. Someone from Yanakan. And let's see, we got a Yuntillan. I think it's a female female warrior there from the Yuntillan steppes, or the Yun hordes, or the Yuntillans. So, and then I really like this one because I always like kind of veiled and masked people. I don't know. I think it's kind of adds an aura of mystery. So that's a Zaramese woman from the Empire of Zaramad. Some people say Zarames or Zaramad, and that's fine, but technically it's actually a Latin vowel, Zaramese and Zaramad. So then we get into the non-human optional. I say optional because non-human races, playable races, are actually there. You go. Not really any artwork, but just to show you some layout. Starts with the Jan, and then we go to the Gajula and the Tinku. And the Rathkiri. So those are all new non-human playable races. Reason they're considered non-optional, as you probably noticed in the core rulebook, is that this is a kind of a sword and sorcery feel game. And in those type of games, like if you ever played any of the Conan role-playing games or anything similar to that, humans are definitely, it's very human-centric, and this setting is too as well. But I like to give people options to do non-humans. So yeah, it's very human-centric, but each human culture or subrace or tribe or nationality, ethnicity, whatever, gives you a lot of different feels. So just saying you're playing human has really no meaning. Like what type, or where are you from? What type of human are you? What type of culture are you from? Lots of different humans. And it's the same way with like the Conan world. To give a really good sword and sorcery example, you don't have to play all the exotic things to really connect deeply with the character. But the options are there, and my advice is in the books and just telling you here in the video. If you're choosing to play a non-human character and the game master allows it, because again it is technically um, optional, then connect deeper with it. Don't just be a guy with pointy ears or somebody with a long beard who's stocky, and try to embrace the whole thing. Read up on the culture, not only the SK version, but maybe do some stuff, research online into some of the mythological connections to those creatures, so that you're not just playing this kind of human with wearing a costume. That you're actually playing someone of that race, with all the stuff and gravitas that comes with it. All right, enough of that preaching, right? So, moving on. So at the bottom of the page, you can see our icon. You can see the page number, but also the iconic samurai mask, and then it names the chapter as character creation is also at the bottom. As you can see, my lips moving below the page very disturbingly. Like I just noticed that. Continue on, and then Blue Sleer, the Blue Sleer, the cast of another cast of Sleer, the Blue Sleer, which are aquatic, are in here as well. Which actually was ideas. The main idea was from some of my Savage Youth, as I call them, some of the younger kids who play Savage Kingdoms. They came up that really cool, so I statted it out and made it official. Then we get to the callings. So there are 6 new callings, I believe it's the cultist, monk, ninja, nomad, vizier, and samurai. So here you go, a little bit more. I'm just this is mostly a flip through, so I won't get too much into the deeper stuff. I'll do some videos later, maybe breaking down the new callings and the new cultures. Probably call it the Savage Kingdoms of the East. I've been working on that Savage Kingdoms of the West sort of series. Now that at least like 2 more people have started watching these, it gives me some minor inspiration. So there's another layout here. You've got callings from the core rulebook. It tells you what the calling, the original callings that were introduced in the core rulebook, how they apply to the new cultures and races in the Savage East. So that's all been taken care of. We get to talents right here. Talents is a big part of character creation, as you probably know. If you're more used to, say, D&D or Pathfinder, that's kind of like your class features and your feats. They're all sort of one. So there are different types of talents. So there's 6 categories, as you probably may or may not know: battle, blood, mystical, social, subterfuge, and other, which is just kind of a miscellaneous category. So there's a master chart right there, as you can see. Talents. Another very minor flaw, just to point out, I wouldn't even call it flaw. Probably no one will notice until I mention it. But for some reason, a couple of the charts, like it changed, like they're in blue, and then I think it's towards in the appendix and later in the book. I'll see if I can remember to show you at the very end of the video. But it changes from blue to red for some reason. But yet the subheaders are still in blue. So very minor. It doesn't matter. It's still all clear and everything. But in fact, I don't know. Maybe it looks cooler that way. But I'm not sure why we made it kind of switch like that. It might just be a little minor mistake, so to speak. So talents. Let's see. I'll skip through a little bit here. Still in the talents section. So right here, you can see the little blood tab, as I like to call it. Now it says talents. We have a master chart of the new talents at the beginning of each talent category. For example, that one's social talents. That has we have 9 new social talents there. There's 3 new blood talents. There's a bunch of new battle talents. There's like 28 to 30, I think. A lot of them are martial arts, very colorful martial arts, sort of Eastern martial arts style. Sort of battle talents. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. I'd say probably 75% of them, of the new ones. And another little piece of artwork. I'm like fascinated with blacksmithing, and so I always have to show. I'm always blacksmithing type photos and crafting pictures and art always sort of inspire me, resonate with me, shall I say? Okay, then we get to weaknesses. There are 3 new weaknesses. There's eunuch, masterless, and primitive. All right, and then we go to orders and sects. Another big thing about Savage Kingdoms is you can join these kind of cool elite affiliations or priesthoods and knightly orders and shady thieves guild type companies and that sort of thing. So we have about, gosh, I think there's almost 20 new ones, 18 or 19, maybe to be more specific. There's the master chart of them. Yeah. So a lot more of those to choose from. Another little mistake to point out is apparently the Blood Disciples order, the Order of the Blood Disciples, appears in the core rule book and somehow made it also into the Savage East. So you get it twice. The good thing is, because I double checked, I just noticed it yesterday. I don't know why we didn't notice it during actual proofing or digital proofing before physical proofing, which is what I'm doing now. But the good thing is none of it's literally copy and paste. Like it's the same. Like there's no just tweaking in it, because sometimes when I'm writing this stuff, I go back through it a few times and I tweak something. I'm like, oh, I don't like that wording, or I don't really like that rule, or whatever. But fortunately, it's exactly the same. So technically a mistake, but also kind of not, because you're just getting the same thing again. But yes, sadly, it is kind of a waste of a page since it's already appeared somewhere. Not even quite a page. All right, then let's see. After the orders and sects or elite affiliations, if you just want to say it like that, section. Here's the blood tab for that right there. Orders and sects. You can see really cool. Getting towards the end of the chapter. All right, so and we come into a new section, and I will show you guys that. So that's the splash page for the new section, Spells and Magic. You can see the magical sort of sigil in the middle that looks a bit Hebrew/Elvish mix, which is very similar anyway as far as Tolkien's version of it, but it has this cool kind of alchemical/magical sigil or symbol or rune in the middle, which is nice. Actually, technically not a rune because it's not cut straight, but anyway, people use that term like that a lot. You can see at the bottom is that's the continent of Hassan. You can see the Zarian Peninsula sticking out there, right there. Blood spatch right there on the side. Towards the top, you get the cooler northern continents with the ice and the snow, that white sort of graduation at the top, which I think looks really cool. And then you got the samurai crossed katana or katanas behind him. So here's another piece of art. So we're now getting into the spell descriptions, the new spells. There are, I think, 23, maybe 24 new spells, which I'm very happy with. I think I like a lot of these better than maybe even the core spells. But it's not about being better. Of course, you need to balance them and match them to the flavoring of the original ones. But it's more like they fill very good niches. So there's a couple of magical arts level 1 spells that kind of needed to fill a niche that was kind of open from the core rulebook. There's even a Death or Shadow level 10 spell, Blight of Zarkon, which means you'd have to be advanced, but at least like 14 or 15 to even have a chance of learning that spell. And there's Pit of Doom, which is like a level 9, and Arcane Edifice and Animate Golem are level 9 ones. Translation and Warmth are magical arts level 1. And then you got some middling stuff that I added, like Ghost Summoning and Light of R and Breath of the Deep. Those are kind of around 5. Spirit Forms, Air Shadow level 7. You get another way to raise the dead. In fact, the spell's literally called Raise the Dead. It's death or life, which I thought was kind of interesting when I was crafting this spell. So Restore Life is like the real way to do it, but only like 3 or 4 people in the whole known world, maybe a few more, know how to do that spell because it's life magic level 10, and you would have to be advanced, but like I said, 14 or 15 or something like that. I need to look at the chart. I think I would know, but I don't. To learn that spell, and then most people, even if you know it, don't really like to use it because you lose a permanent point of health or stamina because you have to infuse the person that you're restoring to life with some of your essence, unless you critically succeed on the spellcasting roll, which is really rare. The difficulty level is very high. The target number, also known as. So this Raise the Dead is a Death or Life level 7, so you can learn it through as a Death Mage or a Life Mage because you're kind of manipulating. In this case, you're dealing just as much with like necromantic energies as you are like pure life energies, which is why it's a cheaper form of doing it, and you come back flawed. So the person, when they come returns to life, assuming they even survive the spell, they earn the madness. I think you gain without looking it up. You gain the madness weakness, or it's phobia of death. I think it's madness, not regardless. And you lose a permanent point of health or stamina. So yeah, there's a easier, cheaper way of coming back to life, but people don't come back right. They're touched in the head when they come back. They've seen too many things and all that. Think like Khal Drogo in Game of the Thrones when they restored him by sort of a cheap kind of old, like weird shamanic sort of way of doing it, so he didn't come back right. But that's more extreme. So enough of that. Moving through the spell section, you can see right here. Here's some more spell descriptions. So it's laid out the same way in the core rulebook, obviously, but because why would you not do that? So you have all the stats like discipline, prerequisites, DL, difficulty level, stamina cost, casting time, range, effect area, duration, and ritual components. So there you go. All right, skipping through. Speaking of ritual components, this is kind of a cool little additional chapter I sort of proud of that I've added after the new spell description. So there's a little section, a little chapter 8 here in the Spells and Magic section called Spell Incantations. So one of my little favorite areas is only like a page and a half long, but it adds more flavor. I'm always about adding verisimilitude as much as possible without totally bogging everything down. There's a happy medium in there, I think. Happy median. So a lot of times with people in tabletop role playing games, not only Savage Kingdoms, but even more so like D&D, where it's just like I cast blah blah, I cast blah blah blah, I cast a blah, and it's like, what are you really doing there? So I know it's just a game, whatever, but if you get deeper into what spellcasting really is, not only in like real life traditional magic and many traditions, but also like established fantasy lore. For example, Tolkienian spellcasting is very much about words of power. It's less about items and tracing runes and making strange gestures, although that's sort of part of it. But it's more about the words having power, and that comes from the speaking of existence into creation. The spoken word that created what we know, the gods using music and words to kind of do that. And of course, Tolkien was a wordsmith himself and a linguist, so that spoke to him even deeper. So anyway, so the point is, when you're speaking a spell, when you're casting a spell, and usually it's a verbal thing. In Savage Kingdoms, however, you can not speak a spell. You can try to do it silently with just gestures only, and just focus only. But it's -5 to your magical arts roll, as you know, unless you have certain talent that like Words of Power gets rid of that. Or you can cast a spell without any singular hand motion, which is also -5 bonus. So you could try to cast a spell without words and somatic gestures, but it would be at -10 unless you have the appropriate talents. So yeah, so it is possible to do that in Savage Kingdoms, just to bring that up. Anyway, long way of getting to this little section where we have spell incantations. And I just wrote like about 12 or 13 different spells. It just kind of gives people an idea of what the spell might sound like. For example, Aura of Majesty. Aura of Majesty is Maja Kethri Baramoru Azariel Tar. Is the incantation. Maja Kethri Baramoru Azariel Tar. And then it lists a linguistic root. That's actually overspeech, or at least my version of it, or angelic, as it's also known as. And then the ritual, it tells you about what's happening when you're doing a ritual. The above incantation is intoned with steady ease, spoken 77 times at minimum, 11 times the sacred angelic number 7, over the course of the ritual ceremony, which of course usually is an hour. Meanwhile, ritual components and meaningful gestures are manipulated with quiet but focused calm. There you go. The next one is Beguile. Mananir suri dormath sorana. Mananir Suridor Math Sorana. It's actually supposed to be the fairy tongue, or is based on it, the spell incantation, also known as other speech. Ritual version, the phrase is repeated at least 67 times, often in a near song-like rhythm with occasional lengthy spans of silence, while the magician sways and performs slow, intricate gestures and manipulations of ritual components. Right. All right. Since this is a flip through, there's enough of that. I probably did too much of that, but I wanted to show you I was very excited about that little addition. All right, chapter number 9 in section 2 is Gods, Demons, and Deities of the Savage East. So that covers the new god, or the god, not the new ones, but the gods of the East. So anywhere from Akhmenon to Shaishang to Arius to Midra to Ngora or Nigora to Takawana to Tarn, Torak, Vala, Zakoatek, Zorexu, Zorak, Zara. There's a bunch of others. And then there's non-human deities, Amrashi of the Chinari, Baldak, Duradin of the Durgar, and talks about the she concepts of the Eluna Dole, the Eluna Quale, the Elunar, which are basically ancestor worship. The Eluna She are particularly into. Elix and Elu, which are the twin moons of the Rathkiri belief, they believe that they are the guardians of the great void beyond the blackest part between the stars, where supposedly the greatest forbidden knowledge exists. The idea of Jadishma. Jadishma is basically personified fate and destiny that the Jan believe in. What else? Shamanta is another Chinari deity. Slur of the Sleer people, Taraxton, the Void, Zaru, etc. All right. Then we get into, here we go. Last section. Actually, I think this is the second to last chapter. Wow, almost at 30 minutes. So let me pick up the pace. Gears and supplies. So you can see the Viking-esque ship right there, the long ship. It's superimposed over the continent of, let's see, Manju. And then Manju is attached to the, as you can see, the land bridge. to Hassan, which is sort of more of an Arabesque continent. And then we start with gear and supplies, like it says, this chapter break. So here's where it actually starts with you can see the different weapon charts. So we introduce more gear and supplies that are more noted to the east, and but you can find some of it in the west. And I think I go into detail saying, we have the usual system that we establish where we have rare, exotic, uncommon, and common items. So in general, if you're in the west, everything would bump down a category. Generally speaking, is a good way to look at it. So if a let's see, nunchaku are rare in the east, then they're probably going to be exotic in the west. A tulwar is rare in the east, so exotic in the west, which is another good example. Naginata or Naginata is exotic in the east, so almost non-existent in the west. But you might find a merchant dragon one over there one of these days. So another little oversight on my part. I think it's on my part. I'm 99% sure. So it's kind of ridiculous. Minor, but to me it's ridiculous in my head. So scimitars are not in here. Probably the most iconic Eastern weapon, particularly Near Eastern weapon, and I left them out of the book because I thought I already established them in the core rule book, and I probably should have checked as I was writing and laying out and proofing and all this stuff. But somehow I saw sickle. There's a sickle in the core rule book and a scythe. Sickle is much closer to a scimitar than a scythe, but still. But scimitar didn't make it in. So anyway, what I've been telling people is to use sickle stats from the core rule book. Bump the cost by 5 is probably appropriate. Although you could probably use the base 30, but I think I meant to make them 35 silver had I done scimitar stats. And the maximum damage is 5, higher than a sickle as well. Otherwise, everything is about right. So it's considered medium. A lot of people might consider them light weapons. They are fairly light, but if you've manipulated one in real life, which I have a few times, they're kind of light, but they're sort of kind of bulky too. They're kind of on the border of what I would consider a light and medium weapon, but in game terms, they are medium weapon, meaning that using them in 2 hands, you do get that extra point of armor piercing, and the max damage goes up by 1. But its base AP is 0. Scimitars are not made to really pierce armor. They're to pierce silk and just flesh, really. And they're very, very light armor at most. They're built for speed and for quick slashing. All right, so and then we introduce some new armor types, as you can see here that I just kind of showed you on the page. Then we get to and some other equipment. Then we get to legendary relics and other magical objects. So I wanted to show you some of the art. There's our cool little Mask of the Oni. So these are these are I hate using this term magic item is so overused. That's why I like to call them other things. But anyway, belt of heroic strength, boots of warmth, candle of enlightenment. We've got a fair number we listed in here. Dice of omen reading, flagon of transformation, the 4-piece crown, also known as the Iron Crown of Galagotson. It's a legendary item. Gem of translation, harp of despair, which is a very rare item. Ring of Lightning, very rare. Scimitar of Severing, the Scrolls of Fu Chen, which are basically unique, so also legendary. Serpent Whip, Shield of Guarding, Wand of Repair, and some other ones that I don't really have time to list. All right, so here we go. Next chapter break, we have gameplay. You can see the mask at the bottom. And the bottom of the page says gears and supplies to remind you what chapter you're in. But now we're headed into gameplay. So gameplay has this kind of bit of artwork, which is pretty cool. Or kind of ninja dude. And introduces a few things that were either didn't make the cut in the core rulebook or just kind of a few things that we added. It's not a very big section. So it covers sandstorms, extreme cold, extreme heat. We have mass combat rules now, which are in here. The quick procedure, it's only like a page. They're very simple, but I think realistic enough. And then it talks about using war as a backdrop. So these are more like just very simple backdrop rules instead of like complete detail, because that's not the point. This is not a miniatures war game. But it does give a little more detail if you want to do unit combat and make it per unit instead of like the entire army versus the entire army sort of thing. And then more optional rules and clarifications. So we added some more optional rules. I like to house rule my own rules sometimes. And then some of those end up being like, wow, why didn't I do this in the first place? So we expanded upon renown. A rule that you can do, you always take at least 1 point of damage if you're hit. So critical failures, non-ritual spells, starting money. So, and then some clarifications about beast companions and henchmen and such, intellect and skill points, kind of reminders, things that were technically in the rules, but they're just, it was very obscure. So we've clarified it. Clarification about stamina costing talents, weaknesses acquired in game, that sort of thing. All right, and then we get to the Gazetteer chapter, which is right here. And this video is already going longer than I thought in my head, but that's how these things usually do, and I probably will not edit this thing. So we're going into the Gazetteer chapter, which is the chapter about detailing all the different kingdoms and territories and lands and geographical features. And you can see our cool samurai there. Oh yeah, probably my favorite part because I love maps. And these are actually my maps, but Michael Scott Phillips made them look much cooler than my original artwork. So you can see they're all contour. These are super awesome. I really love the way these came out. These are some of the better maps. There's some really cool maps in RPG books out there, but to me, these are top tier with a little bit of bias, probably. So the continent on the left is Hassan. The one on the right, so here's the deal. So originally we tried to make it to where it was going to be like connected as it actually is, like one continent at the top, a Manju connected at the bottom, all on this big spread, but it never could quite work out. So we have the one continent, a Manju over here, the African style continent. It connects to the bottom of Hassan, as you can see by the land bridge, but we had to kind of separate it on the pages. So that's the only sort of drawback to it, but it's fine. It still looks really cool. And here we go, some more maps as we get in the Gazetteer section. So since we're in the section about the various lands and seas and such, you'll see a lot more maps. I'll just kind of go through it very quickly. That's the Kingdom of Ebenezuk. And a couple more, Forbidden Lands and Core. Let's see, skip through a little bit. Here's Ragnagard and Shamal right there. And here, let's see, let's do another one. There's Tarnia. Okay, there's Erlin. Valnarok is pretty cool right there. In the north, another sort of Nordic culture, because apparently I don't have enough of those. And there's Zaramad. Right, and moving right along. Okay, so enough of that chapter, and then we get to the Savage Bestiary. So here's our splash page. You can see there's the cool draconic symbol that Michael Scott came up with that wraps around the 3 symbol that we use to indicate Savage Kingdoms 3 or 3rd edition. And so we're now in the bestiary section. So a lot of new animals, gigantic animals, and supernatural creatures, and NPC templates. And it's all broken down in those subsections. I decided to do with that again. I've been on the fence about like the monster manual in D&D listing literally everything in alphabetical order, or doing it more in sections. I'm still more of a in the sections person. That's why I did it, because I like to remind game masters and players that Savage Kingdoms supernatural creatures are a little bit rarer. Like in D&D, they just kind of show up like all the time or whatever. Actually, when I run it, it's not quite as ridiculous, but and where in Savage Kingdoms, being more sword and sorcery based, most of your enemies are going to be like savage animals or creatures, saber-toothed tigers, that sort of thing, or human foes, raiders and stuff from other cultures, war and that kind of stuff. Whereas supernatural creatures, demonic things and fey creatures, fairy creatures, and things, elemental things of that nature, oni creatures, they're going to be in the supernatural section. So that way you're not looking at a giant rat stat block and then next is like some major demon thing. So in my headspace, that just seems a little weird. Maybe it works for D&D, but anyway, so here's some art. Here's our giant spider. Wanted to show everyone that because everyone just loves seeing creepy old spiders. There's our monkey stats. So yeah, obviously I'm in the animals and gigantic animals section. Then we get to supernatural creatures. We don't have a lot of art for that because sadly we didn't really raise enough money on Indiegogo to afford to hire artists to do things. So the artwork that we have is licensed, mostly Adobe stock art. Most of it is about 40%. The other are 90%. Actually, probably, I don't know, it's probably about 85%. The other 15% are things that Michael Scott designed or stuff that I did with like maps and stuff. Actually, it's probably like 80-20. And so there's some stat blocks. So yeah, sadly we couldn't afford the crazy artwork to have someone draw a corpse lantern or a basilisk or a blade demon or something like that. So Devil Scorpion, Genie, Dullahan. So here we go. Hopefully some of my players won't look at the Dullahan because we're running a campaign that they've discovered one of them doing his terrible deeds in the area. And let's see, Dryad, Earth Titan, Fire Giant, Eye of Elix, Fearbolg. As you can see, some of these creatures, you can probably tell by the names, are SK specific creatures and not. But the others are very, sort of generic fantasy, like Fomorians, Griffins, Grave Whites is kind of our own thing. Sort of. Hellcats is kind of our own thing. Hyenaman, Ice Demon, Ice Worm. Also have the variant Ice Worm stats, which are Dune Worms or sandworms, and Krakens, Kelpie, Ice Wraiths. I love those. Leshy, Medusa, Merfolk, Ogre, Nether Ooze, Netherhound, Oni Spider, Rusalka, Sea Serpent, Sluagh, Shadow Demon. I'm not even naming all of them, but a lot of them. Siren, Spawn of Angora, Vampire. Finally have vampire stats. Those of you, because it didn't make the cut from the core rule book, but I realized that was a mistake because there is a talent called Vampire Spawn. Where you can literally start as a lesser vampire, just above a ghoul. Ghouls and vampires are related in SK lore. In fact, they're almost the same thing. Ghoul is just a lesser, horrible form before it becomes a more refined creature. So now we have all the vampire stuff. Voljanoi, I should say it better in Russian accent. Wind Sprite, Woodwraith, Wyvern, Zurian Serpent, a Yeti. And then we go into NPC templates, right here, as you can see. And Desert Tribesman, Priest of Arius, Disciple of Zenthala, Priest of Tarn, Yentillan Raider, White Magi, Zarmi Soldier, etc. And then we go to famed NPCs right there. So we have the stats for Queen Elspeth of Brythia. We have the stats for Gareth Silverhawk, High King of Eredorn, Carleto de Laurentiis, King of Southern Esmondos, Heltak Deep Hammer, called the Troll Crasher, King of Oldorak, King. Octavius V, Emperor of Laurentia. Side note of my campaign, little spoiler here, he was assassinated. Super major NPC, probably the highest renowned NPC in the setting. And but it doesn't have to happen in your campaigns. Rodonicus, the 34th Basilius of Pridon, Grand High Magus of Pridonus, Ragnar the Red, blah blah blah, Shadar al-Rakir, Emperor of Al-Zanamad, Vordemir von Zurich, King of Malovia, Zanasha, Queen of Isrith. So the Slyrian king. Then we start getting into appendices. So we're now in, these are pre-generated characters. So it's kind of like in the core rulebook, we have 4 of them. We have Castile du Janier. He is from Tarnia, which are very Franco-Italian. But of course, so that is, Castile du Janier. And then we have Soji Mazuru, from Samurai from Yanakan. And then we have Tepsura, sorcerer from R, sorceress. Tumonga. Tumonga is Gojula, which is an 8-man type race. And then we get some blank character sheets. If you want to photocopy stuff, or just it's also good just to have them to see like how you with your character creation, like the flow of character creation. Then this is a really handy thing. This is a quick reference charts of favorite talents for each race and calling, and it includes the ones in the core rulebook, the Western ones. So this is a unifying chart, and it supersedes anything from the past chart. In fact, it even says it at the top. So if you find any kind of inconsistencies, and I think there are a couple, shocker, you would this master chart is the final say, as it were. And then we get to index of tables at towards the very end there, and we will close the book. This is page 251, and we close the book with a massive, massive copyright thing and logo of the game line itself, and they were back at the back. So that was it, guys and girls. I apologize that it was 45 minutes. I was really looking at more like 30 to 35, but it's all right. Hopefully this was useful. You guys enjoyed the little walkthrough, so please, Indiegogo contributors, this book will be going out as quickly as possible. I know it's going to take a while. I'm already bracing for 6 to 8 weeks. Because the whole supply chain thing. Hopefully that will get fixed soon. And then Lightning Source itself, because this is print on demand, they're kind of behind as well because of work shortages. So I apologize in advance. So thanks for your patience. The books will be going out soon, those of you who got them, and it will be on sale here in the next day or two once I finish like proofing it even in more detail. So thanks, guys. Like, subscribe, share, purchase the book, share the book, and all that stuff, and kind of help me out. I much appreciate it. I'll talk to you again soon.